Hello everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for joining me. I'm Christo, and this is another Tinto Talk. We are taking a look this time at number 14. Now, the eagle-eyed among you may notice that we have skipped 13, because I'm going to do 13 and 17 at the same time in the next video. But first off, let's talk about this. I think this goes well with our previous video on international organizations. This is situations. Now, situations are another example of a way that Paradox is basically trying to systematize flavor. And what I mean by that is they're attempting to get to a position where, rather than having to build kind of just big long event chains or kind of bolted on separate mechanics for each time they want to add a new kind of flavorful interaction, they have a system, a customizable, scriptable system, which allows them to do it in a better, more maintainable, more kind of interactive with the rest of the game way. It's very promising. Let's dive into it. So here we go. Tinto Talks 14, of course, situation system. So first off, basically, it's content that involves multiple countries over a period of time. So it's not a disaster that affects only one country. It's not an event that happens all at once. It's a kind of, it's an era. It's a period of something happening. So one example is the Black Death, and they talk about the fact that they have game settings similar to Victoria and CK3. EU5 is continuing with game settings where you can, have control of that. So here we go. The Black Death is present in all of these provinces, and it's spreading, as you can see. You can try and isolate your court, expel the sick, blame minorities, and other very efficient ways to deal with the problem. So this is going to happen, usually if you leave it on kind of default historical settings, it's going to happen pretty early in the campaign. And I mean, I feel like everybody knows this, but the Black Death was horrendously devastating. So it's going to be really interesting how, you get like 10 years to kind of make your opening moves, and then I feel like you're just going to be clinging on for dear life while 40 to 60% of a huge portion of Europe dies and obliterates your development. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays, because it feels like that's going to crank up the population growth. You're going to have kind of room to grow all of a sudden. You're going to still have all these buildings. Are you going to need to start kind of demolishing buildings to save your economy as your workforce gets obliterated? It's going to be interesting. Another example, the Italian Wars. So the situation here, basically there'll be, up to 6 different leagues that fight for control of Italy. French, Iberian emperors, and up to 3 Italian leagues. So this happens if, basically if the French or Iberian major power or the emperor declares war on an Italian power. This all kicks off and there's a battle for Italy, basically. So this is going to be really interesting. And this is also noted, this is in the Age of Discovery, and as Johan will confirm, yes, it has ages similar to EU5 to a certain extent. We don't know any specifics yet about how those mechanics work, but we'll of course learn and get to that. If someone gets 80% of the stuff in the region through conquest or diplomacy, then that league wins. Now, I'm very curious to know what it means to win. I assume, prestige, do you get claims, things like that. And when you're in a league, you get other bonuses. So it creates unique interactions, send aid, attract cheaper condottieri, create a new Italian league. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. And what I think is exciting is that these are not just event chains, right? So the Shadow Empire, for example, in EU4, for the longest time, not at the moment, because now I guess technically it's an empire situation, but that's only right at the end of it anyway. It's now oh, that's funny. I think it's highlighting, oh no, Austria is just almost the same color as the impassable terrain. Anyway, the event chains, there are some event chains in EU4 that you just have to know how they work. And if you know how they work and use them to your advantage, they are unbelievably powerful. The obvious example is the Burgundian Inheritance, which is just stupidly overpowered. If you can know how it works and game it, you end up, you can skyrocket your power, basically. Having them not be event chains, you just have to know, and instead be these built-in situations. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about that. So the Red Turban Rebellions are another example. This is obviously one we're familiar with from Mayo and Taxes. You can see that the Yuan Empire ends up at low stability, creates an international organization called the Red Turbans, which gets lots of rebel countries. Now, each rebel nation is playable as when it spawns. So if you want to play as Ming, I guess you have to start as Yuan. This is one of the weirdnesses of often in Paradox games. Like, I've never really found it satisfying to play as a country and then switch to like a seceding country of that one, because you can do things like, if you know you want to play as Ming, you can just focus all of your development in the area that will become Ming and things like that, or you can intentionally ruin the dynasty by destroying buildings and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting. You can read the exact stuff here. I'm more interested in the kind of higher level nature of these situations, but yeah, do go and read the whole thing if you would like to. The one thing I want to highlight here is that they have now custom loyalty values to Yuan during this situation. So the situations are really dynamic. I mean, let's count the ways, right? Here, there's something that's happening to provinces, and they have an impact on the population of those provinces, as well as giving countries actions they can take. Here, they're a kind of diplomatic incident happening between nations fighting for control of a region. They're affecting not the provinces, but the actual nations, and you have effects like being able to attract condottieri and join leagues and aligning yourself. I assume if a member of one league attacks a member of another, they can potentially call members of their league, things like that. Then this one, it's a kind of subject ruler interaction with stuff based on loyalty and internal stability and trying to get rid of Red Turban members. You see how broad this system is? They're really, and it unlocks special diplomatic interactions and all this. So they're really making it very dynamic. Like there's a lot of different things that can happen here, which I am pretty exciting. So other ones that can happen: the Western Schism, the 100 Years' War, and Sengoku Jirai. This is closed nation, right? I need to check. I'm pretty sure that's the closed state. No, this is the, what's the name? This is the kind of big civil war one, right? Yeah. What is the name of the closed state? Anyway, doesn't matter. So there's loads of different ones, and it's it's exciting. There's a lot that they can do with this. These don't emerge entirely organically. That is to say, they're hard-coded. You can mod them, but they're hard-coded. So there's not going to be like another random plague that the devs didn't add that can happen to emerge because of whatever, too many cattle farms in Persia or something. It's not completely dynamic. But what that means, because it's not just an event chain, it's not just happening to one particular country, things like that, you can have a historical event that takes place in your world. And that is one of the things that's really, really exciting to me about this. It's not just, oh, there's a Burgundian inheritance because there's a country called Burgundy, and that probably will be a situation, but there's an Italian war over this region. And it doesn't matter if, maybe Bosnia is a player in the Italian wars. Maybe Tunisia is a big player in the Italian wars, because it's about this region and the leagues that are going to dynamically form around it. Now, yes, it is still tied to things like French, Iberian, and Emperor, but it's Emperor, it's not Austria. So it's allowing you to change history, but keep interesting historical flavor, which I like a lot. Let's take a look at some of the comments. So could Castile join the Iberian League, or is it only made up of major powers and Italian members? It could join any of the leagues if it has a presence in Italy. So you have to have an interest in the region, a presence in the region, in order to be able to do it. And this is just explaining that disasters are mostly about single countries. So situations like the falling apart of the Serbian Empire would be a disaster, not a situation. And then there is people asking about, would the African slave trade triangle be a situation? And he's saying, no, that's purely mechanics, which appears to imply that there are, I don't think we've seen good slaves as a good yet in the game, but that seems to be implying that is going to be the case. Sorry, I'm just trying to turn the music down slightly, but I've realized that I am at 2 Windows volumes, so I can't really do that. So the Wars of Religion fit this system, which is interesting. And they've currently got 13 finished, but plans for many, many more coming up in the future. Looking forward to see what they go with that. Revolution situations, and yes, like the French one, yes, that's the plan. And so that would be, I imagine, maybe first a disaster, then a situation. A disaster when it's contained to France. A situation when the French decide to make it everyone in Europe's problem, I guess, would be how that would go. So colonial independence movements, would that be a situation? Which apparently is an idea they have. And that would make sense, right? You know, it's not just a one-to-one relationship between subject and master. It's a kind of whole continent of America trying to fight for its independence. That could be very interesting. Will there be situations later in the timeline? And he says, yes, the important things will be there. And Johan has said a few times that he thinks people saying that it should all be simulation are wrong. There needs to be historical railroading. That's what players really want. And to a certain extent, he's right. But I hope that we don't just have random things like Napoleon rocking up. I want it to be more dynamic than that. I don't want the French Revolution to have to happen in France, because there's no reason it had to happen in France. Not specifically. I mean, you know, determinism and all that. But there's, if the world had been different, then it could well have been that there was instead, you know, a Spanish Revolution, which ended up going and doing its conquests all over Europe. You know, so I really hope that the alt history version of Napoleon is more the way that they lean. I'm thinking about doing a video on the fact that historical accuracy is historically inaccurate, but I'm not sure how I'll do that. So this is, yes, as I mentioned, confirmation that we do have ages, like in EU4, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I like the ages in EU4 as implemented. They allow the kind of known implementation of mechanics over time. They mark the passage nicely. I think that's cool. So this is the thing. Many times I've been suckered in by we can simulate everything, we don't need narrative guidelines, only for game launches to be rocky, having to readjust to make sure historical narratives are happening often enough. Players want to see an Ottoman Empire, a strong Russia, want to experience the Reformation and wars of religion. These are extremely different things. And I think Johan has partly been misled by Imperator. Imperator, in my opinion, is a boring game, partly because I have heard, and I'm talking about my experience and my knowledge, I've heard of about maybe 6 or 7 nations in Imperator, which means if those nations don't succeed, I've never heard of, don't have any background information or interest in any of the other countries. But in EU4, I've heard of a lot of them, which means if I saw a strong Serbian Empire instead of Ottoman Empire, that would be an interesting and different challenge. Whereas if I see a random Gallic tribe that I've never heard of instead of whatever, Rome, I don't even know any Gallic tribes, you know, that's boring. So I think this part is wrong, this part is right. But the thing about this is that if we always see a strong Ottoman Empire, that's boring. And a strong Russia, why must it be Russia? I'd love it if we could have, you know, more strong commonwealths and things like that. He does say often enough, which I like the sound of. It means it's not just going to hard code it so this stuff always happens. Players want their choices to change history. I think he's wrong. I think he's wrong here. So, and again, I think he's wrong about me, but I kind of think people should just agree with me. So I want my choices to change history, yes. But I don't want history to just play out the same every single time while I change it. Otherwise, it's going to be very repetitive. Because if I'm playing as a small country, my impact on history is going to be limited, at least in the early game. So it's difficult. It's difficult. And I think because I know about these countries, like I've heard of, I mean, I'm partly, to be clear, largely because of EU4, but you know, because I know about these countries, it's more interesting when I see them succeeding. You know, if you see a big Novgorod rather than a big Muscovy, that's cool. That's cool and interesting. And I think that it would be a great shame if it became more railroaded. Now, EU4, I think, has about the right level of railroading. Things often go the same way. There's usually a strong Ottomans, for example, but other things can go off the rails in EU4. And I think narrative guidelines are good when they're in their place. Like Lucky Nations is the classic example of narrative guidelines done ham-fistedly and badly. And I know I just praised EU4 and now I'm saying that their mechanic is bad, but that's just like, okay, you did well because you did well, and here you go, you just get this random bonus. But I think there's a balance to be struck. Reformation and Wars of Religion, yes, absolutely. I want these to happen in 95% of my games. I want them to be able to not happen because that's an awesome edge case, but I want them to happen in 95% of their games. An Ottoman Empire? That's fine. That's completely fine. A strong Bosphorus Empire, I want you to be able to simulate why that rose and have it rise. Now that's difficult, very difficult, but the game seems somewhat equipped to do it. I'm going to do another video. I've decided, I think I am going to do another video straight after this one, talking about the fact that A, historical inaccuracy is inaccurate, and B, a strong Serbia is just as exciting as a strong Ottoman Empire, I think, especially if you have narrative guidelines that can dynamically apply to the strong Bosphorian Empire. But let's keep going here. So DHE is a dynamic historical event, is an acronym and term I started using during EU4 development. Apparently, I haven't heard that one, but fair enough. So that makes sense. There'll be another Tinto talk in diseases, and there are other situations, diseases that are situations he has separately confirmed. So would the Northern Crusades be, the Baltic States be a situation? And he says that will be a crusade using international organization mechanics. Interesting. Interesting indeed. So the Crusades, and we don't know how many, because how many Crusades are there in EU5's timeline? A lot, right? I mean, at least quite a few. I mean, there's the Baltic States one, there's the Southern French one. Yeah, there's quite a few. So those being international organizations is really interesting, and I wonder if the Pope gets mad if you don't join the organization, and is there a rival organization for the defensive side? Will the Baltic states have an opportunity to band together? Man, this game's going to be really good fun. That is international, not international organizations, situations. This is another example of how they're getting it right. I think they are making it so they'll be able to build more flavor in the future without it being just kind of tacking things on. And I'm very excited. Shorter episode today. Next episode, we will take a look at the religion overview and the population system. And there is lots to talk about in the population system. Before then, I'm now going to go record my history isn't historically accurate video. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.